qué tan personales. A lo que vamos con esto es que es una dinámica tan libre y una conversación tan amena que casi siempre los muchachos, los de licenciatura y tal, sus dudas son cómo es que un académico de la talla de della Porta o de los otros invitados han llegado hasta acá, ¿no? ¿Cuál ha sido el proceso, el camino, las trabas que se han encontrado? Y eso a nosotros como académicos en formación nos sirve mucho y nos da muchos ánimos y nos da muchos tips para continuar nuestra carrera, que a veces nos encontramos con obstáculos y queremos que haya acabado todo o nos baje el ánimo. Entonces creo que todos pasamos por ese tipo de cosas. Entonces así como en la dinámica del face to face, pues queremos hablar como unas cuestiones, obviamente preguntas libres, no que ustedes quieran conversar con la doctora, pero podemos entrar en cosas un poquito más personales, pero de ese tipo, no de su familia ni nada. Aunque ok, pues la dinámica es buena, el que guste. Tenemos la traductora. La doctora entiende un poquito español, ¿cierto? Sí, lo entiendo. ¿Entiende español? Sí. Si no puede responder en español, puede hablar en italiano y la chica nos va a acompañar. ¿Italiano o inglés? ¿Inglés? Inglés. Ok, perfecto. Bueno, pues no sé quién gusta comenzar. Ok, si quieres hacer un poquito para acá.
What do you think that could be the more danger for the future of democracy, for the stability of democracy in Europe, for example, that they are more consolidated than Latin America? And my question now is for other kind. Other question. What do you think that most of the academics at least here in Latin America and also in the United States, prefer quantitative method than qualitative? Is the same in Europe, and what do you think that is that trending?
Yes. Well, for the first questions, I'm not so concerned about the breakdown of democracy in Europe, but rather declining quality, and the fact that if the type of support for representative institutions is dropping very quickly. On the other hand, there is a lot of protest, resistance and so on. So my own expectations is that it will be like in Karl Polanyi's, this political economist, that said capitalism and the political system develops through cycles. So I think that what we can expect is that slowly some more attention to social rights will develop, and this can save democracy. Because I think that it is needed. So it is true that when you define democracies, you define usually on the basis of electoral accountability. But democracy legitimated itself also as a system capable of including. And I think that this is very challenged now, and this is producing...
Sorry.
Yes?
Sorry. Yes. We have
yes.
Sorry.
No. Yes.
Colegas, una sugerencia, ¿por qué no nos sentamos más como en una ronda para tener una discusión más colectiva y amigable? Mientras aquí el señor resuelve el problema que está poniendo. Para romper un poco aquí fronteras. Siéntense cerca, no, se trata de estar comiendo.
So there are different expectations in Europe. Scholars in political economy, like Wolfgang Streeck, think that it is possible that capitalism will end because of its own contradictions. I'm not so convinced, but what I expect is that the challenges towards these increasing inequalities is growing. And so what you see in Europe is that, but also in the United States, is that contestations is very high. Conflicts are very strong, and the distributions of the electorate is very tight. So Trump was elected, but you had also Sanders, and Clinton won the primary, but it could have been Trump. Now you see also a very strong electoral volatility. So Brexit succeeded in the UK, but at the same time now Corbyn and the Labour are gaining a lot, and they would be the first party for elections were held now. So you see a situation which is extremely open to contingent events and very quick type of changes. He asked about Mélenchon. So also in France, you have an electorate which was distributed almost equally between candidates on the radical left and the radical right, and the two on the middle. You can have many types of developments, and my impression is that there is more and more sensitivities towards social issues, so I expect some transformations back towards more welfare type of states. But you are right that there is also a moment of heavy conflicts brings about also a lot of insecurities, dissatisfactions. It's not an easy moment. Second question is about the type of methods. When we wrote with Michael Keating this book on methodological pluralism was because my belief is that there is no need for a sort of methodological war between qualitative and quantitativist, because I think that it is important to have both type of methods, triangulations, multi-methods type of research. I think they are very important. Myself, I've used quantitative methods at a very basic level. I found them important sometimes. And qualitative methods, I think, in political science are particularly important because there is not much that can be quantified. So you can quantify electoral results, but you cannot quantify social movements because you don't have data reliable in participation and so on. And also, quantitative research gives you correlation, but if you want to understand mechanisms, you need to go towards qualitative type of research. The book also was for us important in order to think about the epistemological issues. So there is some recognitions that also qualitative methods are important, but sometimes there is the belief that quantitative methods are better. And this is something which I do not believe is true. If you assess qualitative methods on the basis of the standards of the quantitative ones, of course they look weaker. But I think if you look at the important contributions to political science in the past, Dahl, Proppen, Lipset, there were also scholars that have used a lot of qualitative methods. And qualitative methods are very heterogeneous themselves. I think historical method is extremely important because there is something that we tend not to recognize is the impact of history. Nowadays we are doing a research now about memories, social movements, memories of transition times. Yesterday it was Independence Day. So legacies and memories of the past are very important, and they are particularly important in times of crisis. So you need historical methods, and historical methods cannot quantify. You cannot take time as a quantitative variable. So I think it is important not only to have multiple methods, but also to recognize the different epistemological type of rules and the fact that there are different type of standards. I think all the methods have weaknesses, and this is why it's important to have them in combination with each other. Combinations is not something that necessarily has to be done by the same person. You can say, I'm not a good in mathematics. I'm not able to do sophisticated quantitative methods. But I think that's what we wanted to stress in the book in market treating is that we need at least to be able to understand what people do with different methods in order to be able to combine ourselves, our knowledge, because we also based on specific type of knowledge, with other knowledge coming from other methodologies, with some respect for each other. What I regret, and this is why when we wrote the book we wanted to avoid to go in the directions of political science in the United States, is when one method is considered to be superior to the other. So quantitative scholars, not all of them, but some of them say quantitative is the real science, and the others is not. This I think is regrettable, and you tend to go then in the directions of economics, economic science in the United States, which I think is a bad direction because it reduces a lot the capacity to understand phenomena.
On the same issue, we were discussing the very same subject yesterday here in the same room with Gary Kane. So Gary Kane made a point that there was no difference between qualitative and quantitative methods, because his argument was that basically all quantitative methods are qualitative, but the point is the logic that is behind. So I was pushing very hard to try to establish what the operational, King challenges the idea that there is a distinction between the logic of qualitative and quantitative research, and that the qualitative researchers want that sort of pass to have not to be logic about them. So we're discussing qualitative comparative analysis, QCA, region, and he engaged in a very strong and I think sound argument about what would be the substantive differences of the logics involved in qualitative and quantitative. Why is qualitative different?
Well, I have a lot of respect for King's book, KKB and so on, but when we wrote this book with Michael Kitty, it was because we were dissatisfied with the King and Verbra's book, in the sense that we thought that it presented itself as very ecumenic attempt to integrate the qualitative type of methods, but it didn't assessing it on the basis of the standards of the quantitative type of methods. What I think is a big difference, at least in some ways, of using the quantitative methods, is that scholars, or some scholars at least, pretend that in the quantitative type of analysis there is no intervention from the outside. There is you apply the methods and you measure random errors, you measure all these things, and you can do it on the qualitative side if you imitate it. But there are some types of rules in the KKB contributions which I found and I say without being defensive, misleading because, for instance, take reflections on research design. We know that research design based on one case or two cases is rich because it goes in depth in the analysis. It means you look at a lot of variables in the two cases and you are able to reflect about the interactions between the different variables. So you have two cases and you investigate the lots of dimensions in depth, in historical perspective, and so on. According to KKV, if you have two cases, you can have one variable. So you have to standardize all the others, and you can work only on the difference between. And this, I think, is misleading, because it is not the way in which you work. I think that, he said, I'm much more Weberian in this. I think that when you look at social science type of approaches, research and so on, you have to recognize that in both quantitative methods and quantitative method, there is a large interventions by the scholars. So even if you think about quantitative methods, you choose indicators, you choose thresholds. You intervene very often, and very often when they are honest, quantitative scholars says, tell me the results you want to have, and I can manipulate the data so that you get your results, because there is a document. I'm not saying that they always do that, but I find it very impoverishing in the development of the social sciences. The idea that you always have to reason in terms of you have hypothesis, you check the hypothesis, and then you see what's happening. I think that we have to reflect instead a lot about constructions of theories, about different ways of not testing. I don't like very much the use of these terms like variables testing and so on for qualitative analysis. We are developing ideas, and I think most of the important questions in political science cannot be addressed in quantitative ways. So I'm happy when they can be addressed also in quantitative ways. Electoral behaviors is one of these. But even if we look at surveys, we look at if we could analyze surveys in a sort of neutral way. But we make hundreds of decisions which affect the results. And I think that if you recognize this, then you recognize also the important power and capacity and intervention of the researchers when interpreting the data. I think that this is the main difference. Qualitative scholars accept a large role of interpretation of data. Quantitative is not all of them, but some of them make as if there is no interpretations, and I think this is misleading. Then you asked about the specific differences. And, well, I think that we all want to achieve provide reliable data, achieve some generalizations and so on. But in qualitative type of analysis, very often we recognize that there is that science is a collaborative endeavor, that you cannot always assess to which extent you can generalize, but you have to wait, see, and interact, and you may be wrong. While on the quantitative side, there is the assumption that you can achieve the truth. So the neo-positive is the type of approach. It's not only for the quantity, you can have also qualitative research with the neo-positive type of approach, but this I think is my main concern, so that you have to recognize that there is a lot of interpretation. Then another thing which I think is different is that when I work with quantitative methods, I have to make many decisions in the beginning. I have to choose indicators. If I'm using surveys as I did, you have to think in terms of which type of questions I have to ask. It's not something that you can adjust during the process of the research. When you do in-depth interviewing, when you do focus groups, it's much more of what Philip Schmidt called serendipity in the process. So you do a step of the research, you go back to the interpretation, then research again. And this is something that you can do less well with quantitative analysis. And I think it's part of the richness of quantitative analysis. So I think it's the recognition of different types of pros and cons, and different types of limits in the different methods.
Yo voy a aprovechar que entiendes el español porque entiendo el inglés, pero no, me cuesta mucho hablar. En tu conferencia mencionabas a Morlino, propuesta de las cualidades democráticas, y me pareció curioso porque por lo regular son como dos ámbitos teóricos que no dialogan mucho. Por un lado, los que se enfocan en cuestiones más sustantivas o relacionadas a las demandas de la ciudadanía en este contexto de crisis de la representación, y por otro lado, el enfoque de la calidad democrática que ha ganado mucho terreno, ¿no? Mi pregunta es en torno a cómo hacer dialogar estas dos áreas, porque pareciera que están en constante pelea, más que con puentes de diálogo. Y mi pregunta va por una cuestión más también empírica. En los últimos años se han desarrollado muchas experiencias institucionales de participación, ya como reglas dentro de los sistemas políticos. Pero esta cuestión no aparece en la agenda de la calidad democrática. O sea, Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, por decir algunas experiencias que tienen bastantes instituciones de participación donde la ciudadanía se involucra y no necesariamente alineada con el líder, aparecen muy bajas en las evaluaciones que hace de esta teoría. Sin embargo, hay pocas maneras de ingresar este problema dentro de la calidad. Y a mí me parece importante porque creo que estas instituciones permiten mejorar la calidad democrática en contextos muy específicos. No sé cuál sea tu postura frente a eso, o qué me recomiendes porque es mi trabajo.
Well, I can recommend you to start this dialogue because I cited Leonardo Morlino's work because I think that he introduced the element of a substantive quality of democracy. The analysis of the quality of democracies has been for a long time focusing on the procedural dimensions. And procedural dimensions were assessed mainly on the basis of liberal democracy type of some rule of law in addition to that, but it was mainly what was considered to be the benchmark of democracy. Delegation and representation rules. In this more recent work of Morlino, this introducing this element of substantive type of achievements on the civil rights, especially, and on the side of the social rights, I think start constituting an opening that could be exploited in order to develop a dialogue between the disciplines. But what I think that could be the contributions of social movements to this, and what I tried to do in this book, Can Democracy Be Saved, and later on with other reflections on democracies, is recognizing that liberal conceptions of democracy have been important, but that always in history there have been also at the same time other conceptions of democracy. As I mentioned, the liberation and participation challenge some or are intentions with this. And these tensions are very often recognized also in the various experiments, various new institutions of participations and deliberations from the participants ideas about democracies in countries you mentioned, Bolivia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and so on, very different from each other, say, Americans, but all with the idea, how can we bridge or combine liberal conceptions of democracy in a moment of what Colin Crouch defined as post-democracy, so in which liberal democracy is not working well, low quality, with attempts to make people participate more, recognizing that politics is not just what you do within institutions, but that there is politics in all that you do, and sensitizing, for instance, young people to the process that they must believe they can affect, because otherwise there is a total delegitimation of these types of institutions. And I think what deliberative democratic thinking in political community did was also to recognize the importance of other models of democracy, which you see in Bolivia with recognitions of indigenous type of conceptions of democracy. There is more participations of people talking, Zapatistas ideas on democracies and so on. And I'm aware that none of this is really successful, because there has been a lot of debate about the participatory gradually, how much it is able to get people involved, it's almost a minority, so how do you integrate the different circles? What is more representative, what is more participatory are open questions, but I think that they are, what social movement brings in is the recognitions that they are all legitimate standards. I think something different than in the analysis of the quality of democracies, the recognitions that they are in tension with each other. So you cannot sum them up, because representations and participations cannot be maximized at the same time. Deliberation and voting are two different systems that is difficult to assess against each other. So I think that you have to recognize that democracy is a classically contested type of concept, and that the electoral accountability is but one dimension. And I think this is important in democratization processes, because very often what Western institutions impose, I'm thinking now for instance about Eastern Europe or North Africa during the Arab Spring, is immediately elections as the standard moment in which you can say transitions is achieved and so on. And elections in situations of conflict could be the worst you can do for a country. We studied in a research project on democracy and social movements, failed democratization processes, and you have many of these, but especially failed democratization processes which ended up in civil wars. Former Yugoslavia, Yemen, Syria, Libya. And there, I think one of the mistakes was always having immediately elections. And elections can be extremely disruptive when you still are building consensus in multi-ethnic, multi-dimensional type of conflicts. And I think that in this, the assessment of the quality of democracies from Freedom House or from others of these institutions can be very risky and negative, because democracy is not just elections. And nowadays you have elections also in hybrid regimes, and so also the legitimatory capacity of elections is very low. So we did interviews with activists in Egypt, another case in which you had elections very soon, too soon, they produced a disaster. And I don't want to say that you have to wait 15 months or whatever, but it is a situation in which you have to consider also that if you look at research on the first wave of democratizations lasted decades, centuries. Nowadays we have the impression that you can democratize the countries in a few weeks. Arab Spring lasted a few weeks, then you have the election and it's done. It doesn't work.
What do you think about cosmopolitan theories of democracy?
Yes, I think that we need to combine insight from many different democratic theories. And cosmopolitan theories of democracies have been important for thinking about how to transfer standards at national level and international level. But I think that they tended to reasons very much in terms of how to adapt representative types of democracies, how to adapt electoral type of accountability in the supranational dimensions. Also the tendentially unidimensional type of implementation of the idea of democracies at the national level, at the supranational level, also with some innovatory capacity. I'm thinking about the work of Raffaele Marchetti on how to develop forms of participation. But I think that they made things too easy. What we saw now is that you have to recognize that at the same time you have the tendencies towards cosmopolitan developments, the shift of decisional power at the supranational level. But you have also a lot of claims of national sovereignty. So what I saw with research on Greece or on Spain, Ireland, is there is a return to attention to the national qualities, the national processes, and this is something that theorists of cosmopolitan democracies didn't take so much into account. But I have to confess myself, since I said it is interesting also to look at personal trajectory, I also thought when we were working on global justice movement, World Social Forum, Puerto Alegre, and so on, that it was a trend towards more and more cosmopolitan visions. While what we discovered is that it could be a trend, but in the trend there are also a lot of cyclical type of development, and so that you need to combine the cosmopolitan reflections, which are important, not easy to address, with also reflections on the national dimension.
¿Tenemos otra pregunta?
Yes, there's another interesting subject. So you're one of the European scholars who dialogues a lot with US scholars. US political science has a lot of influence in Latin America, and Europe really is quite absent. So the question is, what are the differences between European political science and hegemonic US, and then what is the plus value that you see in European perspectives?
I think that a plus in the European perspective that we also point out in the English repeating is that it is still very diverse. So I had the luck to teach in international institutions like the European University Institute and now also the Scuola Normale Superiore, we have 70% of the grants, PhD grants given to people from outside of Italy. So it is international. Many are Europeans, but it's open also, so if some of you want to apply, you're welcome. It's a young. What you see is that there is a persistence of also national traditions. And that this, I think, is an enrichment because I see it as contributing to a plural approach. You have the Brits with some specific characteristics, you have the French system with still a lot of influence from French scholars, you have new theorists in political theory, you have Germans that still study Habermas and others, and I think it is enriching the combinations. In general, I think that European political science is more historically oriented, also because it is, to a certain extent, weaker. It is forced to interact more with other disciplines. In Italy, political science, for instance, is much weaker than sociology in terms of the number of people who teach political science. This means that you are in departments in which you have to interact with other scholars, political scientists and sociologists and so on. And so I see it as inherently more plural. Historically oriented, and what I think is important also is that political theory is still important. While in the United States there is the pretense that you are neutral towards normative concerns and that big questions cannot be addressed through scientific methods, so you leave them aside. I think that in Europe these big questions are still addressed. And now, I don't want to generalize because there are, of course, also in the United States scholars that address the big questions. But in general, I think that development of political science, the contributions which comes from there is keeping attention open also towards the type of normative theories, not to say we don't want to engage with normative issues.
And speaking about weakness, what are the numbers in Italy, for instance, of political scientists?
I'm not sure, so I don't want to give, but a few hundreds, a couple of hundreds are in teaching political science.
So you have, of course, an association, and how does that work? Italian association.
I would dare to say that it is probably similar to the Mexican association, of which I'm not an honorary member. The sense it is open to political scientists teaching in Italian universities, but also in other European universities. You apply, you are endorsed by scholars and participate in organizations. There are annual congress. And what I think is positive in political science in Europe, I think also the characteristic is that political science in Europe developed in a comparative way. So the most important associations is the European Consortium for Political Research, which is European. And it is much stronger than the national groups, with the exception maybe of the German political scientists. And this comparative approach I find extremely important. While in the United States you have much more a focus on the American politics, and what you have is sort of when you when someone is a comparative politics, studies comparative politics, very often is an area studies specialist. So you study Italy and you say, I'm a comparative politics. In Europe, you have really comparative research. And there are also sponsorship for comparative research, like the European Research Council. The positive aspect of the European Union is the support for comparative research. So what I was surprised to discover is that sometimes I had more opportunities to do comparative research than American research. Then, I think last point is that in Europe there is a trend towards neoliberal development in universities, but it is very much resisted to. So the managerial type of development, commodifications of knowledge and so on, that you have in the United States, you have in the UK, very much in Europe, but you don't have at all in the Scandinavian countries, and you don't have in its poor form in also other countries like France or Italy. So I was looking at comparatively the perspectives of managers of universities in Europe. There were those who said fees are important because we are selling commodities, but there were many who said no, education is something of the public good. And this different type of approach means respect for research and so on. Not saying it is paradise, but I think that if you compare that with the United States, it's quite different, and there is trends toward neoliberal developments, but also a lot of resistance.
In the same field, what do you consider that European political science needs to be as recognized as the American? For example, when we review the list of the researchers who received the Young Huite Prize given by the Swedish Crown, most of them are in the American university, even though many of them are European, but they have to emigrate to the United States.
Yes. Yes, I am in the committee of the Scarti Prize in Political Science, and we had exactly this debate, because I said, look at, I just entered the committee, looked at the list of those who had the prize, and said, you cannot give the message that it is just for Americans. Some other members of the committee said, yes, but they are Europeans who went in the United States. This was also true, but I think that there is hegemonic thinking, and what we need is counter-hegemonic thinking, because there is still very much the idea that recognition should go to the Ivy League universities in the United States, and that there it is the best science. And Europeans have been resisting this, maybe more, they had the chance to resist it more than in Latin America, but it is also true that especially for the first generations of European political sciences, the United States was quite important, so PhD in the United States. Now we are slowly building up. And I think that there will be both tendencies, so conflicts, also there, like in economics, the American influence, and when I say American, from the United States, is important, but when we wrote this book with Michael Keating, it was also an attempt to resist, so to develop some counter-hegemonic thinking about that, because I think that dominance of one country, whatever is the quality of political science in the countries, is bad, because it means it it's not enriching, it's just empowering, making more people poor.
There's something fascinating about what you said, because there is an idea that pluralism came to be because of that sort of weakness and heterogeneity of Europe, and that this is why pluralism came to be. What are the most interesting works of European scholars nowadays? And to start with, and what do you think that we should study in the next 10 years?
Well, tell you two trends which were important from my own development. I think that some of the works of normative theories of democracies were important in enriching our way of thinking. So, for instance, scholars like Jürgen Habermas and all its schools. Habermas is now old. There are other people reflecting on the quality of the deliberations and so on. And also political economy, I think, is an area in which it is important to build bridges with political science. So in my recent work, I found quite inspiring the work of scholars like Colin Crouch, Wolfgang Streeck, who are political scientists and sociologists, but who try to reflect on the relationship between the economic transformations, developing of capitalism and so on, and the political type of effects. I think that these are two areas in which European scholars could give important contributions.
And what should we be studying in the next 10 years?
I think political economy.
It's the same trends.
Yes, yes.
But you don't see, like, I mean, Gary King yesterday, he was like really breaking the idea. He was telling you, look for things that are not being studied, and look for data that are not conceived as data nowadays, but that will be, I mean, the idea was there is something happening that we're not understanding, which is quite clear if you think of right-wing politics, Trump and the right-wing politics in Europe. I think there is a problem with the ways that we're approaching, because we're not. This was the question I couldn't ask in your conference, but we have to go back to Barrington Moore and to Lipset to have sociologically grounded models of democracy. Societies have changed completely, but we don't have the new model that connects institutions to political sociology. But also because we don't even know how it works, this new society. We know about like the new financial capitalism that is blowing everything apart, but we don't have a theory on that actually, or do we?
No, but I don't know what my team was thinking in terms of looking at things that have not been studied yet, because my impression is that what we should look at is things which have been studied also within other disciplines, and that we can bridge. Because I think that the negative trend, also related with the specializations, professionalizations of the discipline, has been the fact that we have lost contacts with the other disciplines, anthropology, political economy, normative theories, all political geography, all areas in which there is knowledge, but is separate. Sometimes concepts are different, but means the same type of things. So I would say that for me, the first step is to try to bridge the different contributions of different disciplines. from this, for instance, with political going to personal experience, for me it was very often prompt and very inspiring, having PhD students that came from other disciplines. So I've supervised PhD students that came from a background in urbanist studies or in anthropology or in one case in economics. And from there you learn that there is knowledge which is important to combine. And this is a point which I think is important for the study of nowadays, big changes. So if you want to understand capitalist development and their effect on democracies, you have to combine your own knowledge with the knowledge of others. You cannot think that you can understand them remaining within the theories which have been used in political science. I think you have to go beyond.
A mí me parece que Rosambalón, en especial en su último libro La Contrademocracia, puso luz sobre muchos los bordes de la teoría política y ha abierto una agenda muy importante. Pero acá, al menos que recibimos mucho de la teoría hegemónica, no han llegado las ideas, no se discuten. Me pregunto si en Italia o en Europa ha tenido impacto en la teoría política, se está discutiendo y si hay algunos autores que estén trabajando sobre eso.
Yes, for instance, in Europe there was a huge impact of Colin Crouch's work on post-democracy, which was interesting because it was with different timing in different countries. It arrived earlier in Italy, the debate, and later in Germany, but it was an important type of debate. Rosanvallon has also been quite influential. Nowadays there is also impact of different thinkers, also Derrida of the French type of schools. And I think that probably there is also an issues of brokerage in terms of sociology as knowledge. What do you need in order to bring in ideas from other countries? You need exchanges, and you need people traveling. In Europe we have programs like Socrates Erasmus that financed movement of students for a few months from one country to the next. And this has brought about a capacity of many people of combining knowledge. So I was responsible for my universities for this project, and I saw BA students that when they left were very different from when they came back, because they came back really enriched by interaction. Now, I think the trend from Latin America has been more interactions with the United States than with Europe, what I think would be nice from both areas, geographical areas, is more interactions between Europe and Latin America. And this is also related with the ways in which political science developed, the fact that there was not much, because in political science type of comparison were very often within most similar research design, so area studies. You compared Italy with the other Southern European countries, or at the best with France. You had comparison among the Scandinavian countries. And it was true that it was easier because you develop more easily knowledge of an area. But what I tried to do in my recent work was on political violence and on democratization was also to risk going beyond and using most different type of research design, which I think helped in understanding how you can use these similar concepts to address different countries. And when I wrote this book on movement parties, I started to read about Latin American developments because they were influential also in Europe. And I think that if we recognize that this concept travels both ways, there are different moments in which, for instance, Latin American thinking and experiences have been important for Europe. It was in the 70s, and it was with participatory budgeting and so on. I think that this helps also comparative analysis. In the historians have a type of comparative perspective that they call histoire croisée, so crossed histories, in which you see also the impact of countries on another and vice versa. And I think that from these recognitions of histoire croisée, also beyond the colonial period and so on, interesting ideas. Also because I think in Europe we have some types of processes, developments, which are similar to Latin America. I come from the south of Europe. I come from Sicily, which is in the south of Italy. And for us, the thinking about dependent economy was internal colonialism and so on, was important in order to understand some developments, and it was important also for Latin America. I think so this opens potentials for interaction.
Which makes think of Putnam's work. No? What do you think about Putnam's work?
I come, as I mentioned, from the south, and many of us from the south were not happy with Putnam's work because it continued a sort of tradition in which the idea was southern Italians are naturally feminist, corrupted, uncivic. And of course there are problems in Italy, in the south. I guess it is quite similar to South in America. But I think you cannot assess civicness in a country and the responsibilities for uncivicness if you reason only in terms of dimensions, variables which are important in the core countries. See, in Italy there was someone before Putnam who did something similar to Putnam, and it was Banfield. Banfield came to southern Europe southern Italy without being able to speak an Italian, but his wife was able to speak Italian. And then he explained why the southern Italians were uncivic. And we did it on the basis of indicators which were imported directly from the United States. How many people read newspapers, how many people are members of associations, and so on. And this could be an important element, but there is also something, different ways to measure civicness, solidarity, interactions with others. And I think this is the typical syndrome of considering Southern Europe as less civilized than Northern Europe because you have less associations and so on. What the crisis itself showed is that there are many other, ways of developing civicness, solidarities, and so on. And when there are not, it is not the fault of the individuals, but there is an institutional quality to it. So about Putnam, my two criticisms would be, one, the fact that he considered very little institutions, political institutions. His indicators were cultural and economic. The responsibilities for some behaviors are more related, I think, with the institutional levels. And then the type of indicators he used was very much linked with the specific conceptions of civicness. The other thing is that if you say cultures, and it took some turning points very much back in the past, the message is nothing can be changed. So the South is always uncivic, always underdeveloped, and it will always remain such. Well, my impression is that there are moments there is potential for big changes.
It's great, because he is also very influential. You know? And what you mentioned with Banfield, Verba did the same thing with Mexico. You know, that he came, that they picked Mexico because, I mean, it was like Italy, you know, that they picked Italy because it was unlike the UK. And they also picked Mexico because it was unlike the US. So it was the bad guys and the guys who could not fit into the model. But it's really very, I mean, I'm sorry that why don't you wake up? Because we have really the privilege here to be face to face. It's amazing. ¿No se animan a preguntar algo?
Yo. Sí. Bueno, en este sentido de que, bueno, me llamó la atención de que en su conferencia hacía énfasis en la corrupción. Entonces podemos ver que hay una grave crisis en la democracia, ¿no? Con respecto a la corrupción, porque no se están llenando huecos o vacíos que supuestamente pues la democracia debe pues de llenar, ¿no? Entonces, ¿qué es lo que puede llegar a pasar? Y también es algo, no sé, bueno, yo es lo que pienso, que tal vez la corrupción es algo que va más allá de ser como, bueno, actos de impunidad, con ya la ética, no hay ética en los funcionarios públicos, o de que este discurso de moralidad, que es lo bueno, que es lo malo, bla, bla, bla. Entonces, no sé, como que todavía la corrupción no, como que no me llena, o sea, no es algo, digo, es algo que tiene que ir como más allá, hay algo más de fondo. Entonces, ¿cómo va a ser la manera en que esto se vuelva a reconfigurar, se vuelva a reestructurar un nuevo sistema? O sea, porque si ya está en crisis y la corrupción es como la bandera que lo engloba todo, ¿qué va a llegar a suceder? ¿No? Es algo que me intriga, a lo mejor y tengo como que las ideas algo infusas, ¿no? O sea, como que están todavía un poco vagas, pero más o menos la idea.
Well, when I studied corruption also with my colleague, I think she went away.
Sí, ya acabó el tiempo de traducción,
Pero ¿quién no habla para nada inglés? Porque, bueno, podemos tratar de hablar español, pero si no, ¿entienden un poquito o para nada? ¿Sí? Pues vamos a aprender inglés. Hoy tenemos.
Italiano. Do you want to translate? No, I try to be synthetic.
Mantengo después la idea.
Sí, yo puedo hacer algo muy sintético, pero no simultáneo. Pero sí puedo traducir como la idea. Sí.
We studied corruption with my colleague Alberto Vannucci, and what we saw is in fact that there are a lot of vicious cycles in which the stronger is corruption, the more difficult it is to get to a different type of equilibrium.
Sí, no, hay círculos viciosos que hacen que la corrupción complique llegar a equilibrios.
But what we saw is also that corruption takes different forms in different countries and in different areas. So you have official corruptions, which is related with violations of the laws, but you also have countries in which some behaviors are allowed, like in the United States. Bribes is legitimate to a certain extent, and that you have to work out different type of ways to address these forms of corruption.
El problema es que la corrupción es muy heterogénea, tiene un componente cultural, y el problema es que, o sea, la legitimidad o la ilegitimidad de las prácticas varían mucho entre los países de lo que es considerado como corrupto, por ejemplo, cuando hay movidas, cosas así, si eso es corrupción o no. Y el problema es que no es un concepto, sino que hay tipos de...
What we are studying in Florence is what we call anti-corruption from below. So the capacity of social movements and civil society actors to focus, point as the negative aspects of corruption and contrast them.
Lo que estamos estudiando en Florencia es la capacidad que tienen actores sociales desde abajo de generar prácticas para limitar la corrupción.
And we see that there are different types of organizations, some of them also using, exploiting new technologies in order to introduce elements of transparency, take anonymous or big leaks. Organizations that actually have been able to discover a lot of corrupt practices and to make people sensitive to that. Because one of the problems with corruption is that sometimes people think it doesn't affect you. It's something that always happens and are not directly affected by it. It's called like a crime without victims. What I think these organizations are doing is spreading the acknowledgement that corruption is something that is affecting the individuals, and so that you have and you can react. It's a long process.
No, también estamos estudiando cómo las nuevas tecnologías pueden permitir generar, digamos, anticuerpos contra la corrupción, como Anonymous o Wikileaks. Y sí, no, está complicado todo esto, pero could you repeat the second idea?
This will be.
Yo puedo decir, y cómo estos actores sociales que se están involucrando con el uso de tecnología están tratando de difundir entre la población la información para hacernos sensibles en cómo la corrupción sí nos afecta a todos. Porque comentaba que la corrupción es un crimen sin víctimas.
Entonces presente ese crimen sin víctimas.
Así se presenta como un crimen sin víctimas y creemos que no nos afecta. Entonces estamos hablando de difundirlo y serlo más cercano a la ciudadanía.
Eso es muy interesante, eso del a victimless crime. It's not a victimless crime. Porque el problema es que ayer estábamos en una mesa de corrupción y como que es evidente que todos tenemos comportamientos corruptos, pero como que no, ¿verdad? Como que lo corrupto no está acá, sino que está afuera. Y no somos víctimas y tampoco somos actores, o sea, es decir, que no tenemos responsabilidad, pero en realidad es un sistema. Y somos víctimas. O sea, el problema es que si nadie asume que es una víctima, no hay una posibilidad de generar una reacción.
Y tampoco estamos aceptando que somos actores en ciertos...
So what methods do you use to study that? How do you study that?
We have been studying it on the basis of analysis of trial records, so investigations by the judiciary, which are very rich very often, because what they tell you is the dynamics of the exchange, so the cultural norms, the type of institutions which you have to develop, because there is another thing about corruption. So you think it is just a crime that doesn't require social capital in Putnam's terms. So you think everybody can bribe someone else. It is not true. It requires a complex system, and so a lot of brokers in this system, transformations in the political parties themselves, and judicial investigations are a rich instrument. Sometimes they are based on tapping, so they put a microphone, hidden microphone, and interviews also. Interviews, especially with either corrupt politicians who have been discovered, and they are very upset because they think they have to pay for all the rest. So they say, we don't want to be the only victims, we tell you what also the others do. So it happened to me on research that these people were really willing to contribute to their knowledge because they felt like the victims of the system they belonged. And others type of testimony which were very interesting were the ones of experts of the places, so those who were not corrupted, but as you mentioned, corruption is something that you see, that to a certain extent you observe, participate in, and these people, when you can gain their trust, are also important.
No sé, los métodos que utilizan es que no solo archivos de casos, o sea, archivos jurídicos de casos de corrupción, sino también entrevistas, curiosamente, con gente que agarraron y que se consideran víctimas de ser los únicos que tienen que pagar por algo que está generalizado, y como si son víctimas, pues consideran que pueden como que generar su propia narrativa, como en términos de generar justicia para ellos. Y dan mucha información sobre el fenómeno mismo, de cómo funcionan los mecanismos del fenómeno. Y eso es muy interesante, claro, es decir, tener acceso, o sea, atreverse a preguntarle al tipo si está dispuesto a contar su historia. Excelente idea. Pues aquí tenemos, si quieren trabajar sobre eso, tienen muchos contactos acá, ¿no? Informantes que hablan, ¿no?
Cuestiones que quieran participar, que quieran dar testimonio.
Sí, porque al día siguiente aparece en una bolsa.
Esa es la cuestión.
La violencia. O sea, va muy acompañado la corrupción y la violencia. Entonces lo vemos en muchas partes de México. Y más allá.
It's true, in fact, also in Italy you have a lot of corruption combined with organized crime.
Aunque dicen que la corrupción es un crimen sin víctimas, a la larga se puede sobre todo causar graves problemas, incluidas ya cosas deleznables. Por ejemplo, en Inglaterra, por principalmente manejos sucios en cuestión de inmobiliarios, ocurrió uno de los mayores incendios en muebles que son rentables. No sé si ustedes lo vieron, que pasó de que un edificio donde pues habitaba gente pues, de clase media, clase muy baja, se incendió. ¿Y por qué pasó eso? Porque se empezaron a sobornar y se empezaron a hacer tratos sucios con constructores y políticos cercanos al Partido Conservador. Y si bien dicen que la corrupción no es víctima, o sea, es un crimen sin víctimas.
No, en realidad, un problema de traducción. No es que es un crimen sin víctimas, es que se concibe, se piensa como, y como nadie asume el papel de la víctima, no hay una...
So it is presented as if you kill someone, you are the victim. If you stole someone, you are the victim. While the difficulties with corruption is that you need to make this bridge that you have made. So you have to tell people that when you have a politician who is helping you, if you pay a bribe, it is not just a relationship between you and him, but there are a lot of people who cannot have the same services. So it is a biased idea which is used in order to control people.
And by the way, this is an excellent example, es un ejemplo excelente de un fenómeno que sería muy difícil estudiar cuantitativamente. Y que si lo estudiamos cuantitativamente veríamos cosas muy distintas que si tratamos de buscar ese tipo de mecanismos.
What we saw also in terms of victims is, for instance, the fact that costs of public services increase when there is corruption, because in the reality the bribes is not paid by the entrepreneurs. Berlusconi was an entrepreneur, so he paid a lot of bribes, and he became rich, not poorer, because at the same time the costs increased of all the things for which he paid bribes. So the bribes were paid by the citizens.
Mencionabas que la corrupción tiene un componente cultural, pero creo que hay un reto importante, al menos para la academia, en establecer algún marco que permita, que nos evite caer en la tesis del presidente de México, que es la corrupción es cultura y todos somos corruptos, todos nos portamos mal, pero no es lo mismo un comportamiento que rompe alguna regla menor, quizás,
¿Por qué no cuentas
a un ejercicio patrimonial?
La anécdota de la tesis del presidente. ¿Cuál es la tesis del presidente?
Lo que pasa es que el presidente de México, Peña Nieto, dice que la corrupción es una cuestión cultural. Y como tú dices hace rato, si es cultural, no hay salida, no se puede hacer nada. No sé qué marco teórico nos permita dar eso, pero asumiendo que sí existen comportamientos ilegales por parte de todos.
Para contextualizar, para contextualizar, hubo un escándalo enorme en México sobre la Casa Blanca, es decir, una casa que cuesta 2 o 3 millones, no, 7 millones de dólares. Un escándalo de corrupción que le hubiera costado la cabeza a cualquier persona en otra época. Y en algún momento, después de toda la crisis, ¿qué es lo que dice el presidente? O sea, como para decir que se están quejando.
Todos son así.
Sí. This is, you had the questions also on this, because I saw that you address both.
How do you think that we can improve or stimulate the participation, political participation, to change these things?
When I mention culture, I'm also aware and don't want to go in the directions of it is sort of genetic or it is something you have been taught since you were young. What we use with Alberto Vannucci is a new institutional type of approach in which we consider the constructions of norms and the ways in which corrupt institutions contribute to building this type of norms. So, of course, you need acceptance of corrupt practices, and you have some indicators of widespread corruptions. For instance, when politicians who are acknowledged as very corrupt received a lot of votes. So they're not punished for their corruptions, but they receive more votes. This means the corrupt system is quite institutionalized. We saw that there were also cases, institutionalizations is also important because corruption is still an illegal system. So you need, for instance, to know how do you bribe someone? How much do you have to pay? There is a lot of need for regulations, and it cannot be implemented by the judiciary. So you need the mafia. It's also some institutions which have implemented this. And so it is also addressing your questions, this type of institutional rules that spread with corruptions that you have to address. And forms of political participations that can intervene on the corrupt issues. What we have seen and we have studied it is sort of collective wisdom blowing, so spreading the information, producing scandals. What in the past newspapers and media did, and now do less and less because they are corrupted themselves. So I think that the importance of groups like Anonymous or WikiLeaks, which are also imitated by very specific groups in Europe at the national level, is first of all spreading information about these scandals, things which cost huge amount of money just for a few, spreading the information about the fact that we are ourselves the victims, even if sometimes negotiating with the perpetrators. These movements also very often produce proposals for reforms, also at the legislative level. So there have been groups that have claimed, and sometimes successfully, for laws which protect those that from inside, information from the outside to the outside, or laws which help re-regulating systems. Because one of the main ideas was corruption spreads because of the political interventions, of state interventions, and so on. So we have to deregulate. But deregulations, privatizations, and so on created more corruption. Just it was not called such because it was with the public, no longer with public employees, but more with private. But this is another knowledge which I
Ok.
Bueno,
Sí, una última pregunta. Iba a preguntar antes si se entendió la idea o necesita. ¿Sí?
Sí, yo
Bueno, yo la primera que me parece interesante, porque me conecto mucho con eso, es que cuando hablamos de una dimensión cultural, no estamos hablando de algo genético que no puede cambiar y que está transmitido de manera estable de una generación a otra. Y eso creo que es importante porque ayer también así se interpretó la palabra cultural en la discusión. De lo que estamos hablando es de que hay una dimensión cultural simbólica de interpretación de los significados que se vincula con una dimensión institucional de prácticas. Pero no solo son prácticas, sino que también hay una forma de darle sentido simbólico a esas prácticas, lo que no significa que no puede cambiar, significa que no es homogéneo, sino que puede ser heterogéneo en términos de sentido y polisémico. Esa es la primera idea que dijo, que es importante que luego hay un problema institucional de tipo de prácticas y de configuraciones de prácticas, porque tú aprendes, o sea, tú estás formando parte de un juego con reglas del juego y hay instituciones en eso. Y luego,
En respuesta a lo que comentaba el compañero, cómo los actores sociales pueden involucrarse para cambiar esta parte, nos decía la doctora que tenemos que hacer ruido, así como estas organizaciones como Wikileaks, como Anonymous, que lo hacen a nivel internacional. Hay ciertos grupos a nivel nacional, comenta en Italia, que empecemos a hacer ruido y a no dejarnos corromper, porque cuando empieza un grupo a hacer ruido, lo que comentaba, a veces es peligroso y nos sentimos con un poco de miedo de ser esas prácticas porque no sabemos qué nos va a pasar y no nos sentimos seguros por lo mismo de la corrupción. Que no dejemos que nos mantengamos haciendo ruido para que esto tiene que cambiar. Dice que ella cuando lo empieza a estudiar y como la corrupción está dentro de las mismas instituciones, es algo parece ya institucionalizado en nuestro país y hay en los distintos niveles en la corrupción que hay dentro de cómo se corrompen las normas o las leyes que hay y entre los mismos ciudadanos. Es este seguimiento que se le tiene que dar con la recomendación.
sí, no, y que luego el problema es que cuando se depublizó, cuando se privatizó todo, o sea, se pensaba que se iba a atacar la corrupción, se argumentó, en realidad más bien, se argumentó que privatizando se iba a eliminar la corrupción. Lo que se eliminó efectivamente es la corrupción de fondos públicos y luego pues, siguieron las mismas prácticas pero en el sector privado.
And more difficult to control.
Ya no se pueden regular porque ni siquiera tenemos acceso a eso. Claro.
Ok, una última pregunta para Jacob.
I would like to know about the feeling and the perception of some problems that are happening in Europe about the immigrants. Are you really, the European citizens are willing to still receiving immigrants from other parts of the world, even though some of them are not willing to assimilate and to integrate to the European culture? And does that mean a risk for the stability of democracy in Europe?
There is a conflict very strong on issues of migration, with at the same time something we are studying, which is movements in solidarity, which have been very strong, very widespread, and involving very often not only the activists, but also normal people, let's say. So movement of solidarity, especially towards the refugees in what was called the long summer of migration 2 years ago. And this is very interesting. In Austria, there were also at the borders, and they were not only activists. But there is also a lot of right-wing xenophobic reactions, which is very contagious. So it's also influential on center-right and center-left parties. So that the slogan recently by Renzi, the head of the Italian center-left parties, was "We have to help the migrants at home," like the old slogan of the right, because they think so we can have more votes, because it's easier to say in a moment of crisis you have to defend your home. And these xenophobic reactions are very well organized by the right and alt-right sort of people financed by Trump directly, and it is a similar type of discourse, it's clash of civilization.
For example, Sigmund Bauman, in his one of his last books, he just passed away, he has a new term, Protopia, that says that we wish the past, we wish that is a problem, because the speech in nowadays is that the politicians are promises what has happened in the past, and many of the very conservative people want to go back, step back.
Yes.
Is that a problem? Because he says that behind that idea is the wish of the return to the authoritarian rule.
I think that is right. Bauman is very pessimistic in general, so I hope that there will be also some seeds of resistance. But it is a moment in which this card of xenophobic type of reactions is being played also very often in areas in which there was no migrant. So Pegida, which is the radical rights movement against the Islamizations of Europe, developed in Dresden, in Eastern Germany, where there was basically no migrant. But it is very much sponsored. It is a type of discourse which, in times of crisis, is always very much used on the right side. Risk influencing also the center.
Or for example, that Donald Trump tried to responsabilize Mexicans or Latin Americans of the problems that are living in the United States, as though that many European politicians try to responsabilize to the Islamic people from what the problems are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one difference is that in the United States, for instance, the Dreamers, it has been a more long-lasting trend of semi-legalizations with also concrete type of consequences. In Europe, you don't have such a huge amount of people who are kept in these semi-illegal conditions. But with the refugees crisis, this tended to develop in Europe as well, the scapegoating. Thank you.
Gracias a usted. Pues muchas gracias a la doctora por regalarnos este tiempo en el face to face. Gracias a ustedes también por asistir. Si gustan, pasamos afuera para tomarnos una foto de recuerdo. Anotan su asistencia ahí y igual les compartimos esta